Welcome everyone to another Beyond Terrain mini lecture. Today we are going to be discussing parasites, probably the topic with the most misinformation out there, not only from the moderns but also from the alternative health world. Everyone wants to claim that parasites cause illness, and although I have seen a shift that they are beginning to discuss it in a manner of trying to address the root cause, which is toxicity, they are still shilling their supplements, pushing their detox protocols, which are not taking into account drainage pathways, proper detoxification principles, and which could cause more ecological harm than good. Of course, you take a detox protocol, you poop a worm, and you think, wow, it worked, I feel so much better and so much clearer, but it doesn't mean that the root cause was addressed. It just means that you suppressed the symptom successfully, and we know that that leads to harm down the road. So yes, you can remove the parasites from your body and maybe temporarily feel better, but the underlying toxicity is still going to be there. Before we dive too deep, I'm super excited to announce that we have launched the Beyond Terrain community. This is more than just a platform. This is truly a movement, part of the greater paradigm shift occurring with the terrain mentality, philosophy, mindset. It's a place to unlearn, reconnect with individuals, rebuild from the ground up, understanding true logic, rooted in nature and terrain principles. It is free to go join the community. There are some introductory classrooms over there on the fundamental causes of disease and how to address those. You'll also gain access to fundamental principles of the terrain as well as master classes. So go and join. If you want to go deeper and sign up for the full membership, you will gain access to an in-depth classroom on parasites, 11 modules where we discuss everything that we're going to discuss today, but more in depth with the literature backing it up as well. We'll also explore where the literature falls short. Future deep dives will include things like genetics, cell biology, problems with electron microscopy, mold, bacteria, who knows where it will take us. Currently, we're also discussing movement, lifestyle, reflection. We have tons of reflective prompts in there to guide you on the most meaningful path possible. And you'll really want to join as a founding member because you'll be able to shape the direction of the community. If there's something that is pressing that you want to learn about, you will be able to help decide which things come first, which things we dive into first, building curriculums. You'll also be able to help me decide what topics I discuss with the guests we have on, guest suggestions for the podcast as well. And with all membership spots, there will be opportunities to earn prizes. This could look like free months in the community, clothing, books, etc. This is truly a growing, living community, and it will grow with each and every one of you inside of it. Without further ado, let's talk about parasites. Obviously, the moderns and the alternative health folks agree that the definition of a parasite is something that takes a hold of a host and does not provide any value in return. It basically sucks the energy physically from the host and creates toxicity, playing absolutely no role whatsoever. Obviously, there is a long history when it comes to parasitology. I think one of the most beautiful examples of symbolism occurs. We studied the tropical diseases. Mostly that's where a lot of discussion on parasites comes from. And these were studied in areas where, we were taking advantage and colonizing and sucking the energy out of indigenous populations. And of course, we were providing no benefit in return. Although the colonizers did think that they were benefiting, but, it's highly, highly debatable. So the discussion of parasites does need to be classified a little bit. There are helminths, which are the worm structures that we observe sometimes at the site of disease, sometimes in asymptomatic hosts. There are protozoa, which are the single-cell eukaryotic organisms. Those are the things like Plasmodium, Cryptosporidium, Blastocystis. And there are also ectoparasites, lice, mice, fleas, things of this nature. These are said to also cause some sort of disease or symbiosis. We're in the Bedford Basin right now, as you can see behind me, but it's pretty windy up here, so I'm going to continue on our walk so the audio quality isn't too terrible. So our discussion must be different for the classes here. The role of helminths, of worms, is quite different than protozoa. The role of protozoa, honestly, is unclear depending on the species, which is something that we dove into in our parasite classroom, each specific species. But the fundamental problem, whether it be helminths or protozoa, is that there's this idea of the asymptomatic host. Now, we've obviously seen this problem in bacteriology, in virology, and it does not escape parasitology. This is an absolutely huge problem. It's completely contradictory to Koch's postulates and pure logic in and of itself, but for some reason, modern science and alternative science seems to think that it's okay to be supposedly infected with one of these parasites and have no symptoms whatsoever and still say that the parasite is the root cause. The big reason why we are discussing parasites is mostly because of the harmful protocols and ideologies out there around killing our own biological systems, especially in the case of worms. Generally when we talk about parasitic infections, people are referring to worms, especially in the alternative space. Generally, people do not discuss the protozoa class of parasites in the alternative space. That is mostly left up to modern medicine and their anti-parasitic drugs, anti-malarial drugs. But when it comes to worms, the moderns and the alternatives are both doing the exact same thing, which is killing the biological systems using harmful methods, right? Whether it's alternative or not, getting rid of your worms is actually counterintuitive. There's actually empirical evidence that suggests that it's harmful. Realistically, when we're discussing worms, we need to be looking at why they're there. When it comes to protozoa, there's actually a lot of questionable ideology when it comes to the methods used in their detection. Whether or not they're actually there is a huge question when it comes to protozoa. And here lies, again, huge problems when it comes to the methods used. Generally, it's admitted that the microscope is the gold standard. It's what's been used throughout all of history. PCR and serological methods were not around. And so microscopy was used. But now when you look at papers, they say that microscopy is the least sensitive method of them all. This is because when you compare PCR and serology to the use of microscopy, there are many more PCR positives and serological positives than there are microscopy positives. They also state, it's well admitted, that in microscopy, they're introduced as many artifacts. Many of these organisms, especially protozoa, need to be stained. It needs to be dead tissue, right? Stained with different types of toxins from cultures. Not often are we looking at samples directly taken from individuals, right? We're looking at cultures, which again introduces so much subjectivity and variability in the answers that we get. Obviously, there's a question of external validity as well. And then when it comes to the idea of using serology, we know that antibodies are not specific. You can go watch the immune system video on that topic. We know that these are not specific whatsoever. And PCR introduces great variability. And when it comes to isolation of protozoa, yes, of course, they say that you can isolate them into an xenic culture, which is devoid of all other cells or other biological organisms, but they're not running these genomic tests from xenic cultures, right? They're still using metagenomic techniques based on preconceived ideas. These aren't being verified by purified organisms. We're not isolating the genome of these protozoa. Regardless, the PCR methods are still questionable, as we have been discussing in the podcast, in other episodes as well, and we'll be diving more into the faulty use of PCR. You can go listen to the Yernea Tomzik episode or the Jamie Andrews episode. The problems in virology do bleed into the fields of microbiology, of parasitology. The other thing is that you'd think the gold standard is clinical diagnostics, but the reality is with this whole idea of the latent parasite or the latent cyst or the asymptomatic host, full-fledged parasite, worms, protozoa forms, these aren't causing illness in people, even though they're present, confirmed through microscopy, confirmed through PCR, serology, whatever faulty method you want to use, but there's no clinical diagnostics to confirm that what we're seeing is actually causing illness, right? There's a total disconnect in the entire process of determining whether or not these so-called parasites actually cause illness, or rather than just playing this role in the natural human flora, and perhaps even aiding in detoxification, and aiding in bioremediation, in aiding of the healing of the body. So obviously the evidence for pathogenicity is sort of black and white. It depends on the organism that you're discussing. Many protozoa have been attempted to be introduced into humans. Not many by pure isolation. Like, not many times have you taken an xenic culture, which is a truly isolated part of the protozoa life cycle, and introduce it into a healthy host and cause disease. Actually, when you look at the human contagion studies, Koch's postulate studies, none of these have actually shown positive results. Even when it comes to worms, people have ingested worms and they have not caused disease. They've ingested cysts, and perhaps worms have developed, but not with the accompaniment of symptoms. Koch's postulates has never been conducted, used for parasites, and now in the literature, they're coming back to this admission that it's because of the asymptomatic host, so that it makes achieving Koch's postulates very challenging, right? Well, it's impossible because, of course, parasites do not cause disease. Any introduction into healthy hosts does not cause disease. There are super interesting cases of this, but depending on the organism, it depends on the type of discussion that you want to have surrounding the type of isolated introduction of these parasites. For example, in some studies, they have to inject the parasites in their later stages of development, which does not fit the theory of cysts being the contagious aspect of what being spread through water, etc. But they have to inject it into the skin, under the skin of animals, or into their brains to cause disease. Like toxoplasmosis, they say it's this brain-altering, brain-eating parasite, but the only way to produce the brain-eating nature of it is to inject it directly into the brain of animals. It's just absolutely absurd logic. Whenever they try to introduce cysts or even larval states into healthy people by ingestion, natural routes of exposure, even intranasally, they're not producing disease, and they are not producing infection in a lot of the cases. They can't actually get it to take and colonize the host because it's always going to be terrain dependent. In the classroom, we've looked at tons of failed human control trials. I believe we've looked at almost all of them, every single one that I could find. I think there was only a couple that I really had trouble getting my hands on, but I dug deep for a lot of them. You'll have access to them all if you join the classroom there. We also undergo an in-depth analysis of each one, why there might have been symptoms present, confounding variables. And we even look at the cases where, they were just trying to prove methods of transmission. So they were just trying to prove if you could infect someone, not if you could actually cause disease. That's what a lot of the original papers actually tried to do, because there were just no symptoms being produced. They couldn't write about it. Fundamentally, the conclusion is the terrain is everything, right? Whether or not you develop an infection, if you're colonized with an organism, it depends on the terrain. Animals don't go where there's no food. Insects don't go where there is no food. Humans don't go where there is no food. Humans go to the grocery store now, and they go to restaurants and bars. You don't go where there is no food. It is no different on the micro level when it comes to bacteria, fungus, or parasites. The true root cause generally is going to be toxicity. The role of helminths is to clean up toxicity. They bioremediate environments. They clean up environments. They might actually help in immune modulation, which from our understanding is actually more indicative of rejuvenation processes and detoxification. But the parasite is the response. It is not the cause. Although they might be seen at the site of disease, this does not admit fault. This does not prove causation. This is correlation, and it's poor correlation at that, because more often parasites are present without disease. So now everyone's being sold these parasite cleanses. Some may be better than others. We covered long lists of them in the classroom. Big ones, obviously the IVER. Zeolite is a big one that comes up. The alternative health world is catching on. They are starting to learn about the terrain, so they're marketing it in a way to say, oh, we're addressing the root cause, we're addressing heavy metal detox. Detoxing too quickly can be harmful as well. You want to make sure that it's slow, sustainable, and rejuvenation is occurring in the process. This idea of kill everything, get everything out instantly, right away, like this is a problematic mindset that we carry as human beings. Sometimes we need to slow down, work with the rhythms of nature. Oftentimes, if you're having toxicity or deficiency issues, getting back to the natural principles, it's what's going to best suit you. Of course, there's always a time and a place for a detox protocol, or even maybe an anti-parasitic drug. I'm not saying that symptom suppression is always useless. Sometimes it is life-saving, but it truly depends on the situation at hand. Hopping in and just doing parasite cleanses because you feel a little brain fog and tired in the morning is no reason to do so. Generally, the symptoms, when it comes to protozoa, is gastrointestinal. So you're having some sort of toxicity in your GI tract. This is curbed by eating pure, clean sources of food, drinking water, etc. And when it comes to helminths, you might have, brain fog, fatigue. Once again, we're seeing that it is related to toxicity. Killing the worms will relinquish this toxicity into your system. So hopping in and doing this cleanse is not always going to be the best option because you're going to leave that toxicity in your body. The other problem with antiparasitics is that they're like antibiotics, they're non-specific. You're wiping out the entire system, right? And even if you're doing things like colonics or things that are, introducing some sort of quickness to your GI tract, you're going to be losing a lot of microbial species, a lot of your microbiome there as well. And again, the microbiome is playing a very specific role. It's very attuned to the terrain. It's very individual. It depends on what you're consuming. It depends on your stress levels. It depends on your psychology. It depends on your spirituality. It depends on absolutely everything. So with healing parasites, you always want to get back to the terrain principles first. Instead of jumping into a cleanse, get back to nature, right? Implement natural principles into your life. It's very, very simple. If you want to go learn about the root causes of disease, you can go and join the community. It is free to join the community to gain access to that classroom. As always, if you want to go deeper into many more topics moving forward, join. You're going to want to be a founding member to lock in that low price. This is going to be a growing community. The energy being put into this community is only going to be increasing. So you're going to want to be there at the beginning to shape the direction, because I want it to be a true representation of the terrain paradigm, as objective as we possibly can be, considering empirical evidence, considering rational and logical evidence. And it's a multifaceted environment. It's not just going to be PDFs, it's not just going to be videos, it's not just going to be reflections, it's going to be everything. It's going to be a very holistic approach. If you want to be the best version of yourself, the Beyond Terrain community is where you want to be. If you want to learn about fundamental terrain principles in the most clear, in-depth, concise way possible, if you want to learn and share and flesh out ideas and get input from like-minded thinkers, Beyond Terrain community is where you want to be. So go and join. You're not going to want to miss out. We're going to have lots of fun over there. We're going to learn lots. We're going to unlearn more. And we're just going to be the best versions that we possibly can, all in alignment with natural design, natural principles, terrain principles. Hope you guys enjoyed the mini lecture today, and take care.